Hello Year 5 and Year 6, you've got me this week for your English. That's exciting for you, isn't it? And for me too. It's really good to see you all, and I hope that you're all keeping safe. This week in our English, we're going to be thinking about the passive and active voice. Now, I know you're going to say, I don't know what that means. It's okay. We use the passive voice quite a lot. And we also use the active voice in our writing. And I know that some of you last week were doing lots of great active voices in your sentences, and that's brilliant. But there are times when the passive voice is what we need to be using. It's a more formal way of writing. And we're going to be writing our own newspaper article this week. So again, it needs to be quite formal in the way that it's written. And also, passive and active can work together. We're going to use both of those voices in our newspaper article, but we need to get good at being able to spot passive and active voices. So I've got two sentences here to get us going for our English today. So I've got Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. Now I want you to just have a think for a minute. Does that sound like a passive or an active sentence? Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. What do you think? I think it is more of an active sort of sentence, this one. So we need to change it into a passive. Now, what do we need to do to this sentence to make it less fizzy? So we're going to think about this here. So this here is our subject, Neil Armstrong, first man who walked on the moon. So he is our subject. And the moon is our object. Now, if we wanted to make this into a passive sentence, we're going to move those two around, because we're going to start with the moon and we're going to finish with Neil Armstrong. And that will help us to understand how a passive sentence is written. Okay, so I'm going to write over here, the moon, which is our object, was walked on. Walked is our verb, isn't it? By Neil Armstrong. So we've made that into a passive sentence now. And the word by is really important. It's really, really important. So when you do your investigating today, I want you to have a look and see if you can find that word by in those passive sentences, because you will spot them quite a lot. It helps to flatten out those sentences and to make them less fizzy, so to make it sound more formal and more objective. So let's have a look at our second sentence. Jacob tossed the money into the air. Now, if I wanted to make this into a passive sentence, then I need to start with my subject, which at the moment is at the beginning. And where does he need to be? He needs to be at the end, doesn't he? And the object, okay? So how are we going to do this sentence, do you think? Just take a minute. What am I going to do to this sentence? So the money is the object, isn't it? So I'm going to move that because that's too far into the sentence. I want that to be at the beginning. So the money was tossed into the air. Okay, so the money was tossed into the air. I am missing my subject. Who was it by? By, that word again, look, Jacob. So the money was tossed into the air by Jacob. I've flattened that sentence out. I've made it more passive. It sounds more formal. And that's what you need to be starting to look for in all the writing that you see today. So if you've got newspapers at home, brilliant. Look at the newspapers. Have a good look. See if you can find the passive and the active voice in there. If not, have a look on the internet. Go to BBC News. Have a look at how they're writing those articles. Some of them will be written in a very active way because they're reporting on things that have happened now. but a lot of what they report on are things that have happened over the last few days. So have a look at those. There's a little bit, another clip to come, and enjoy being nosy and having a look for those passive and active voices. Okay, so I've got a newspaper article for us to look at here. This is called Shaky Start to Saturday. I want us to have a look at this newspaper article, and I want us to try and see if we can find the passive voice in it. So the residents of the sleepy village of Walden, near Rochester in Kent, had a rude awakening in the early hours of Saturday when the village was rocked by an earthquake. Okay, can you see any passive in that? So we've got by, okay, and we've got were rudely awakened, had been rudely awakening. That doesn't sound right. Does that sound right to you? The residents of the sleepy village of Walden, near Rochester in Kent, so we said where it is, it's just a fact, we're telling people where it is, had a rude awakening in the early hours of Saturday, when the village was rocked by an earthquake. So it's setting the scene, it's telling us where it is, and it's telling us what's happened. It's not giving us much more information than that, and that's what we call a starter for an article, okay? We're just laying down what the rest of the article is really going to all be about. Shocked inhabitants were awoken at 5 a.m. on Saturday morning by violent trembling. Again, we're just setting the scene, we're telling people what's happening. And then we've got our first quote, okay? And it's in that special speech that we've been thinking about, or you have been thinking about in your English. So it felt like me, whole house were moving. So we've set it actually in the vocabulary that the person has used. So it's not grammatically correct. It is just reporting exactly what that person has said. So when we get to do that in your work, you can be as wacky as you like, really, because you can be reporting all sorts of different things in certain ways. But remember those the punctuation that you need to be including when you're doing your writing. It's really important, or else otherwise we're going to think you've lost the plot, because you're going to start talking in this speech and actually not putting it in the right punctuation, which means that it's all going to get jumbled up in your sentences. So think about how you're laying everything out this week in your writing. Okay, so she explained by one shaken resonance. So we've got that ed suffix. So we know that the stuff is being reported. So that is in the present tense, but we're reporting it because it's happened. So we're using the ed suffix because it's happened. It's a past tense. So Mrs. Miggins went on to say how lucky she felt that her house had only suffered superficial damage. Again, it's a flattened down sentence. There's not lots of active in there. Again, it's just reporting on what's happened and what Mrs. Muggins is saying. Or Mrs. Miggins is saying. Sadly, other residents were not so lucky. Properties in the high street were particularly unfortunate, many of them being razed to the ground. Again, raised has got that ed suffix. So again, it's remembering you're writing in the past tense for that because it's something that's already happened. The only bit that needs to be active is the quotes from the people who were there. However, there are no serious casualties, fortunately. Medway Hospital with head trauma. Oh, sorry, I think I might have missed a bit out there yet. Emergency services were very quickly at the scene, tending the injured and searching for survivors. Yes, there's an active in there, but it's written in a way that it's passive, okay? It's been flattened out again. A police spokesman said, and this is where we've got that punctuation telling us that it's direct speech. We cannot believe that there were no serious injuries, especially given some of the damage caused. A couple of residents were taken to Medway Hospital with head trauma, but all of them were released later that day. Again, it's reporting on things that have happened. They've been to the hospital and now they're going home because they're okay. Those left without their homes have been offered shelter at the local primary school. This is the bit that's now inactive because it's happening now. So it's in the future tense, okay? It's in the present tense, it's actually happening now, okay? So those left without their homes have been, not had been, have been offered shelter at the local primary school, okay, which luckily Mr. Fitter's there, so we're all right. Mr. Fitter explained how the village school is an important part of the community. So it's not that it was an important part, it is an important part now. So it is an important part of the community. And as such, there was never any doubt that the school would step in to help those left homeless by this dramatic event. Seismologists are still unsure as to why an earthquake struck in this location, being the first one ever recorded in the UK. How unfortunate is Walden? But again, it's reporting it in the present because they're talking about it now, but they're also referring to the past. It's never happened before. Why is it happening now? Professor McGonnell said, it is unclear at this stage whether we can expect more aftershocks to follow. For now, though, the people of Walden are pulling together to try and recover from this devastating effect as quickly as possible. So again, it's reporting in the present, it's bringing it up to date now, it's telling you what the residents are feeling right at this particular moment, and then it's sort of finishing off your article. Now, what we want you to do this week is to write your own article, but before we get there, we need to start messing about with some articles that are already there. Now, you might be able to access some of those on the internet. If you can, that is brilliant. But remember, particularly when you're looking at those news feeds, some of those are going to be live. So some of them are going to be talking to you in the active voice. Your job today is to go and find some passive and active voices in text, okay? There's loads of them on the internet. I've been looking at them all weekend. BBC website, I've got some. So have a look, see if you can find some active voice sentences and some passive voice sentences and see what the differences are between those, okay? And then tomorrow we're going to do a bit more work on this before we start writing on Wednesday our very own special article. Have fun today going and searching out those passive and active voices in all those different texts, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.